every sailor swears to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They pledge to bear true faith and allegiance, and promise to serve with honor, courage, and commitment. This oath represents society's trust in those who guard America's waters and protect maritime interests around the world. Navy training emphasizes systematic thinking, operational planning, and mission execution under the most challenging conditions. Skills designed to protect America's maritime interests through strategic coordination and organized action can be perverted for evil when placed in the wrong hands. Naval discipline creates individuals capable of maintaining long-term operations while following complex procedures and protocols. Welcome to Savage Case Files, where we expose the most shocking betrayals, brutal crimes, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Today's episode: 5 U.S. Navy men who turned maritime discipline into murder sprees that terrorized America for decades. Subscribe now to never miss our true crime stories into the darkest betrayals of military honor. Naval service represents honor, courage, and commitment to protecting American waters and citizens. These men took the sailor's oath, then spent decades taking innocent lives. From Washington's Green River to California's neighborhoods, they turned service into slaughter. 5 Navy servicemen became serial killers, with over 70 confirmed victims. Their killing sprees spanned nearly 3 decades of systematic terror. Naval training that should have protected Americans was used to hunt them with deadly efficiency. From the Pacific Northwest to California, no region was safe from their reach. Multi-state killing sprees were enabled by naval mobility and training that gave these predators unprecedented access to victims. These men used their maritime assignments to spread death across the nation. Prostitutes, young women, families, all became targets for naval-trained predators who exploited society's most vulnerable populations. Vulnerable people who trusted the wrong men in uniform paid with their lives. Over 70 confirmed deaths, with suspected totals reaching into the hundreds. Naval discipline was applied to systematic killing and body disposal methods that shocked investigators. Organized approaches learned from military logistics and operations created some of America's most methodical murderers. Methodical torture, rape, and murder, spanning decades, showed how maritime training enhanced criminal capabilities. Green River Killer, Golden State Killer, Toolbox Killers, each name represents years of terror and dozens of victims, media nicknames that became synonymous with naval-trained evil across multiple states. These weren't random killers, but systematic predators with military training. From 1974 to 2002, these men killed with naval-trained impunity while maintaining connections to military service. Nearly 3 decades of murder while wearing the uniform or carrying the credentials of naval service. How did the Navy miss the monsters in their ranks? Life sentences, suicide, natural death in prison. Various forms of justice were eventually served. Some were captured after decades of investigation. Others died before facing full consequences for their crimes. The question remains, how many more victims could there have been? What role did Navy service play in creating these systematic killers? Did maritime training enhance their ability to murder and evade capture for decades? The uncomfortable questions about military screening and oversight that the Navy still faces today. Families were destroyed by men who were supposed to defend them from harm. Communities lived in terror for decades, while naval-trained predators operated with impunity. The lasting trauma of betrayal by those sworn to protect American citizens. Multi-jurisdictional cases were complicated by naval mobility that allowed killers to operate across state lines. Decades-long investigations were hampered by systematic criminal methods learned through military service. Naval training made these killers particularly elusive to law enforcement. 5 cases that expose how naval service can mask the most dangerous predators in American society. From decorated sailors to life sentences and death, these men represent the ultimate betrayal of military values. We'll examine how these men perverted their maritime training for mass murder. 5 sailors, over 70 victims, decades of terror that shocked America and changed how we view military service. Case by case, we'll reveal how naval servicemen became the nation's most feared killers. Case 1. Gary Ridgway. Gary Leon Ridgway served in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War era, where he developed the systematic thinking and organizational skills that would later make him America's most prolific serial killer. Born in 1949, Ridgway appeared to be a dedicated sailor who completed his military service without incident. His naval training in logistics and operations would later be applied to the most extensive murder spree in U.S. history. Ridgway served aboard the USS Eagle and other naval vessels, learning military procedures for systematic operations and resource management. His service record showed competence in following orders and maintaining equipment, giving no indication of the monster that would emerge after his discharge. The disciplined and methodical approach he learned in the Navy would become the foundation for decades of systematic killing. Following his honorable discharge, Ridgway returned to Washington State, where he worked in truck painting and other blue-collar jobs. The structure and routine of naval service gave way to civilian life without clear direction or purpose. What his shipmates and commanding officers never suspected was that Ridgway harbored deadly impulses that military discipline had kept contained. Washington's Green River area became Ridgway's primary hunting ground, a location he knew intimately from his youth and enhanced by his naval training in geographic analysis. The river system provided the perfect disposal site for bodies, with its remote areas and flowing water that could carry evidence downstream. His knowledge of waterways and terrain, enhanced by maritime experience, made him particularly effective at concealing his crimes. Ridgway targeted prostitutes and other vulnerable women who worked the streets of Seattle and surrounding areas. These victims represented society's most marginalized population, women who often went missing without immediate police attention. His systematic approach to victim selection showed the methodical thinking he had learned during his naval service. In 1982, Ridgway began what would become the most prolific serial killing spree in American history. The Green River Killer was born in Washington's waterways, where bodies began appearing with disturbing regularity. His naval training in systematic operations was now being applied to mass murder on an unprecedented scale. Ridgway's approach to killing showed clear influence from his military background in logistics and operational planning. He would select victims based on availability and vulnerability, kill them efficiently, and dispose of bodies in locations designed to delay discovery and destroy evidence. His systematic methods made each murder more refined and harder to detect. Over nearly 2 decades, Ridgway killed 49 confirmed victims, though investigators suspect the actual number may be much higher. The Green River Killer's reign of terror continued, largely unchecked, as he used his naval-trained discipline to avoid capture while maintaining his deadly routine. Each successful murder made him more confident in his systematic approach. The investigation into the Green River murders became one of the largest and longest-running serial killer cases in American history. Police faced a predator who used naval training and operational security to avoid detection, while continuing to kill with increasing frequency. Multiple law enforcement agencies struggled to catch a killer whose military background made him exceptionally elusive. Ridgway's systematic disposal methods showed clear naval influence in his understanding of waterways and geographic features. Bodies were placed in locations where natural elements would destroy evidence, while delaying discovery by authorities. His maritime knowledge of currents, terrain, and seasonal changes enhanced his ability to conceal his crimes. The psychological profile developed by FBI experts struggled to capture the true nature of a killer whose naval discipline masked his psychological state. Ridgway appeared to be a normal working man, while maintaining a decades-long murder spree that claimed dozens of lives. His military training had taught him to compartmentalize his activities and maintain operational security. For years, the investigation stalled, despite massive law enforcement efforts involving hundreds of detectives and millions of dollars in resources. The Green River Killer seemed to have either stopped killing or died, leaving families without answers about their missing loved ones. Ridgway's systematic methods had successfully hidden his identity for nearly 2 decades. In 2001, advanced DNA technology finally provided the breakthrough that caught America's most prolific serial killer. Scientific advances succeeded where traditional investigation had failed, linking Ridgway to murders through genetic evidence he couldn't eliminate. The systematic killer's naval-trained methods were finally betrayed by forensic science. Ridgway was arrested at his workplace, where he had maintained the appearance of a normal truck painter for decades. The revelation that this ordinary-seeming man was the Green River Killer shocked investigators and the public. His naval bearing and calm demeanor were evident even during his arrest, showing the discipline that had helped him maintain his deadly secret. During his confession, Ridgway provided detailed accounts of his systematic approach to murder, with the same methodical precision he had learned in the Navy. He described victim selection, killing methods, and body disposal with military-style attention to detail. His organized approach to mass murder had been enhanced by naval training in systematic operations. Ridgway accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, receiving 49 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The Green River Killer will die in prison for his systematic crimes against innocent women. His case represents the most extensive example of how naval training can enhance a killer's ability to operate undetected for decades. The Green River case changed how police investigate serial murders and highlighted the importance of DNA technology in catching systematic killers. Ridgway's naval background had made him one of the most elusive predators in American history, but ultimately couldn't save him from scientific advances that finally brought justice to his victims' families. Case 2. Joseph James DeAngelo. Joseph James DeAngelo served in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War, where he developed the reconnaissance and operational skills that would later make him California's most feared serial killer and rapist. Born in 1945, DeAngelo appeared to be a model serviceman who transitioned seamlessly from military duty to law enforcement. His naval training in stealth operations and systematic planning would be perverted into the most extensive crime spree in California history. DeAngelo's military service provided him with advanced training in reconnaissance, surveillance, and operational security that would prove invaluable in his criminal career. Naval instruction in gathering intelligence and moving undetected through hostile territory became the foundation for decades of systematic stalking and attack. His service record showed competence and reliability, masking the predator that would emerge after his discharge. Following his naval service, DeAngelo used his military background to secure employment as a police officer, first with the Exeter Police Department and later with the Auburn Police Department. The transition from Navy service to law enforcement represented the ultimate betrayal. A man sworn to protect and serve who would use both military and police training to terrorize California for over a decade. In 1974, DeAngelo began his criminal career as the East Area Rapist, systematically attacking women and couples in the Sacramento area. His naval training and reconnaissance was evident in his meticulous preparation, as he would study neighborhoods and potential victims for weeks before striking. Over 50 rapes were committed by a man who combined military stealth with police knowledge to evade capture. DeAngelo's systematic approach to crime showed clear influence from his naval background in intelligence gathering and operational planning. He would conduct extensive surveillance of target areas, studying victim routines and identifying escape routes with military precision. Each attack demonstrated the methodical thinking and attention to detail he had learned during his service. The East Area Rapist's methods revealed sophisticated understanding of law enforcement procedures gained through both naval service and police work. D'Angelo knew how investigations were conducted and used this knowledge to avoid leaving evidence that could lead to his identification. His dual background in military and police operations made him exceptionally dangerous and elusive. In 1979, D'Angelo escalated from rape to murder, becoming the original Night Stalker who terrorized Southern California with brutal attacks on couples in their homes. The Golden State Killer was born from the combination of naval training and police experience, creating a predator with unprecedented skills in stalking and killing. 13 confirmed murders followed, each showing increasing sophistication and violence. D'Angelo's victim selection process demonstrated the systematic approach he had learned through military service. He targeted couples and individuals based on vulnerability and accessibility, conducting extensive reconnaissance before each attack. His naval training in intelligence gathering allowed him to identify perfect victims while minimizing his risk of capture. The geographic spread of D'Angelo's crimes across multiple California counties showed how he used his law enforcement connections and naval mobility training to operate across jurisdictions. Police agencies didn't initially realize they were investigating crimes committed by someone with both military and law enforcement backgrounds. His systematic approach to multi-jurisdictional crime was enhanced by naval training in operational coordination. D'Angelo's methods included breaking and entering, systematic stalking, and brutal sexual assault, followed by murder. Naval training in stealth and reconnaissance was applied to criminal enterprise on an unprecedented scale. His police knowledge provided additional advantages in avoiding detection and understanding how investigations would proceed. The investigation into the East Area Rapist and original Night Stalker cases involved multiple agencies across California, each initially unaware they were hunting the same perpetrator. D'Angelo's naval and police training made him nearly impossible to catch through traditional investigative methods. His understanding of both military operations and police procedures gave him significant advantages over investigators. For decades, the Golden State Killer cases remained unsolved despite massive investigative efforts involving hundreds of detectives and advanced forensic techniques. D'Angelo had successfully used his naval and police training to maintain operational security while committing over 60 crimes across California. His systematic approach to evidence elimination and crime scene management kept his identity hidden for 44 years. The breakthrough in the Golden State Killer case came through genetic genealogy, a new investigative technique that used DNA evidence to identify suspects through family connections. In April 2018, this scientific advance finally succeeded where traditional investigation had failed. D'Angelo was arrested at his Sacramento home, ending one of the longest-running serial killer investigations in American history. The revelation that a former police officer was the Golden State Killer shocked law enforcement and the public. D'Angelo had hidden in plain sight for decades, using his naval and police credentials to maintain respectability while committing systematic crimes. His military bearing was still evident during his arrest, showing the discipline that had helped him maintain his deadly secret. During legal proceedings, D'Angelo's systematic approach to crime was revealed through evidence spanning 44 years of criminal activity. His naval training in documentation and operational planning was evident in the organized nature of his attacks. The most complex serial killer prosecution in California history demonstrated how military and police training had enhanced his criminal capabilities. In 2020, D'Angelo pleaded guilty to 13 murders and numerous other crimes to avoid the death penalty. The Golden State Killer finally admitted to decades of terror that had traumatized California communities. His naval discipline was evident even in his systematic confession, as he provided detailed accounts with the same methodical approach he had used in his crimes. Joseph James D'Angelo was sentenced to life without parole, ensuring he will die in prison for his systematic crimes. The Golden State Killer case represents the ultimate betrayal of both military and police service, showing how naval training combined with law enforcement experience can create exceptionally dangerous predators. Case 3. John Eric Armstrong. John Eric Armstrong served aboard the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier, where he learned the mobility and systematic thinking that would enable him to become one of America's most geographically diverse serial killers. Born in 1973, Armstrong used his naval assignments to create a multi-state murder spree that exploited the transient nature of military service. His aircraft carrier deployments provided access to ports across the country, turning shore leave into hunting opportunities. Armstrong's naval service gave him legitimate reasons to travel extensively, visiting ports from Michigan to North Carolina and beyond. Each new location represented fresh hunting grounds where he wasn't known to local authorities. His military credentials provided instant respectability and trust, making it easier to approach potential victims without raising suspicion. Between 1992 and 1999, Armstrong killed 5 confirmed victims across multiple states, with investigators suspecting he was responsible for 11 or more murders. His victim profile focused on prostitutes and vulnerable women in port cities, exploiting those least likely to be immediately missed by authorities. Each port visit became an opportunity for systematic predation. Armstrong's methods showed clear naval influence in his organized approach to victim selection and crime scene management. He would identify vulnerable targets, commit his crimes efficiently, and dispose of evidence before his ship departed for the next port. His military training in logistics and operational planning made him exceptionally difficult for local police to track across jurisdictions. The investigation into Armstrong's crimes was complicated by his naval mobility, which allowed him to strike in multiple states before returning to sea. Local police departments initially had no reason to connect murders in different states to a single perpetrator. His systematic approach to multi-jurisdictional crime was enhanced by naval training that taught him to think strategically about operations across vast distances. Armstrong was eventually captured when investigators connected DNA evidence from multiple crime scenes to his naval service records. The traveling sailor's killing spree finally ended when forensic science succeeded where traditional investigation had struggled. He was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to life in prison, where he remains today. Case 4. Richard Mark Evanitz. Richard Mark Evanitz served in the U.S. Navy before beginning a criminal career that would terrorize Virginia and South Carolina communities. His military service provided him with the discipline and systematic thinking that characterized his approach to stalking and killing young victims. Evanitz appeared to be a model veteran and family man while secretly planning and executing brutal murders. Between 1996 and 2002, Evanitz killed 3 confirmed victims, targeting young girls and women with methodical precision. His naval training was evident in his systematic approach to victim selection and crime scene management. Each murder showed increasing sophistication as he refined his methods through military-style operational improvement. Evanitz's systematic stalking methods demonstrated clear influence from his naval background in reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. He would study potential victims for extended periods, learning their routines and identifying vulnerabilities before striking. His military training in surveillance and operational planning made him an exceptionally dangerous predator. The investigation into Evanitz's crimes was hampered by his systematic approach to evidence elimination and crime scene management. His naval training had taught him to think strategically about operations and security, skills he applied to avoiding detection while continuing his murder spree. Local authorities faced a predator whose military background made him particularly elusive. Evanitz's criminal career ended in 2002, when 15-year-old Caro Robinson escaped from his captivity and provided authorities with crucial information about her abductor. The survivors' courage and detailed testimony finally exposed Evanitz's crimes and led to a massive manhunt. When police closed in on his location, Evanitz chose suicide over facing justice for his systematic murders. Case 5. Roy Norris. Roy Lewis Norris served in the U.S. Navy before partnering with Air Force veteran Lawrence Bittaker to create one of the most brutal killing teams in American history. The combination of naval and Air Force training created a partnership that applied military logistics and systematic thinking to torture and murder on an unprecedented scale. In 1979, Norris and Bittaker began their brief but incredibly brutal killing spree in California, targeting 5 young women who were systematically tortured and murdered. Their mobile torture chamber was equipped with various tools and showed clear influence from military training in equipment management and operational planning. Naval and Air Force experience combined to create exceptionally organized and methodical killers. Norris's naval background provided skills in systematic operations and equipment maintenance that enhanced the partnership's ability to commit prolonged torture. His military training in following procedures and maintaining operational security helped the team avoid detection while committing some of the most horrific crimes in California history. The victims, Lucinda Schaefer, Andrea Hall, Jackie Gilliam, Jacqueline Leah Lamp, and Shirley Leadford, endured unimaginable torture before being murdered. The systematic nature of their torture showed how military training in procedures and equipment use could be applied to the most evil purposes. Each murder demonstrated increasing sophistication and brutality. The investigation into the toolbox killers was aided by audio recordings the killers had made of their torture sessions, providing horrific evidence of their systematic approach to murder. Norris's naval training was evident in the organized and methodical nature of their crimes, which followed consistent patterns and procedures learned through military service. Both Norris and Bittaker were convicted and sentenced to life without parole for their systematic torture murders. Norris spent decades in California's prison system before dying of natural causes in 2020, never facing execution for his role in the brutal killings. His death denied full justice to the families of victims who had waited over 40 years for accountability. The Toolbox Killers case represents how military training from different service branches can combine to create exceptionally dangerous criminal partnerships. Norris's naval experience, combined with Bittaker's Air Force background, created killers whose systematic approach to torture and murder shocked even experienced investigators and prosecutors. 5 sailors who swore to defend America became predators who terrorized it for nearly 3 decades. Gary Ridgway killed 49 confirmed victims as the Green River Killer before receiving life without parole. Joseph James D'Angelo murdered 13 people and committed over 50 rapes as the Golden State Killer, now serving life imprisonment. John Eric Armstrong killed 5 confirmed victims across multiple states, with 11 plus suspected, and remains in prison for life. Richard Mark Evanitz murdered 3 victims before choosing suicide when cornered by police in 2002. Roy Norris tortured 5 women to death as half of the Toolbox Killers before dying in prison in 2020. These men represent a disturbing pattern of how naval service can mask the most dangerous evil. Their maritime training provided organizational skills, systematic thinking, and operational mobility that made them more lethal and elusive killers. Naval discipline that should have protected American lives was perverted into methods for taking them with unprecedented efficiency and geographic reach. Which case shocked you the most? The Green River Killer who used Washington's waterways as his disposal site for 49 victims? The Golden State Killer's decades-long reign of terror while serving as a police officer? Armstrong's multi-state killing spree enabled by aircraft carrier deployments? Evanitz's systematic stalking methods that terrorized Virginia and South Carolina? Or the Toolbox Killer's mobile torture chamber that combined naval and Air Force training for maximum brutality? Should the Navy bear greater responsibility for psychological screening and ongoing monitoring of service members? These 5 men completed their naval service and received honorable discharges before beginning or continuing their killing careers. Their cases raise uncomfortable questions about whether better screening could have identified their potential for violence before they received training that enhanced their criminal capabilities. Do you believe naval service actually created these killers, or did it simply attract individuals already predisposed to violence who then used their maritime experience to become more effective predators? The debate continues over whether military service transforms people or merely provides tools that can be used for protection or destruction, depending on the individual's true character. The geographic impact of these naval-trained killers stretched from Washington to California to multi-state sprees, with no region safe from their systematic methods. California bore the heaviest burden, with 3 of the 5 killers operating within the state at various times. Their mobility and maritime training allowed them to spread terror across multiple jurisdictions while avoiding detection for years or decades. Over 70 confirmed victims lost their lives to these naval-trained predators, though the actual number may be much higher when considering suspected cases. Each victim represents a life cut short by men who had sworn to protect American citizens and waters. Young women, families, vulnerable individuals, and fellow service members became targets for predators who exploited the trust that naval service typically commands. The timeline of terror spanned from 1974 to 2002, representing nearly 3 decades of killing by Navy veterans who used their maritime training for evil on land. Some operated simultaneously in overlapping regions, creating waves of terror that law enforcement struggled to understand and combat. Their systematic approaches and operational security made them particularly difficult to catch and prosecute. Justice eventually prevailed through life sentences, suicide, and natural death in prison, but not before these men had claimed dozens of innocent lives. Some families waited decades for closure, watching appeals drag on while their loved ones' killers remained alive behind bars. The legal system's response showed that naval service provides no immunity from the consequences of systematic evil. The broader questions raised by these cases continue to challenge naval leadership and criminal justice professionals. How can the Navy better identify individuals with violent tendencies during recruitment and service? What role does maritime training play in enhancing criminal capabilities? How do we balance the need for effective naval training with the risk of creating more dangerous criminals? The investigation challenges faced by law enforcement highlighted how naval training made these killers particularly elusive. Multi-jurisdictional cases were complicated by maritime mobility that allowed killers to operate across state lines, systematic approaches to evidence elimination, and crime scene management. Learned through military service, extended investigations for years or decades. These cases demonstrate that military service, while honorable for the vast majority who serve, can attract or enhance individuals with predatory instincts. The systematic thinking, operational planning, and geographic mobility provided by naval training created some of America's most prolific and elusive serial killers. The victim impact extends far beyond the confirmed death toll, affecting families, communities, and public trust in military institutions. Survivors and families still deal with trauma caused by men who should have been protectors rather than predators. The betrayal of naval honor created lasting damage to communities across multiple states. This has been Savage Case Files, examining how naval service can mask the most dangerous predators in American society. Subscribe for more investigations into the darkest betrayals of military trust and the pursuit of justice. Hit the notification bell to never miss our examinations of systematic evil that shocked the nation. 5 men who chose murder over maritime honor, death over duty. Their naval training made them more dangerous killers, but ultimately couldn't save them from facing justice for their crimes against the innocent Americans they had sworn to protect.